With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
You are about to listen to the Dr. Daliah Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Daliah Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Daliah.
All right. Well, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So while Biden was in office, before Trump took over, there was a lot of, I guess, movement towards the working less but being paid the same. And the 4-day work week, the 3.5-day work week, even the 3-day work week was touted. And when you at first heard, okay, employees only want to work 4 days, they get paid then for 4 days. That quickly got clarified as no. You're paying employees for 5 days, but they only have to show up and work 4 of them, which means they get a free paid day every week, in addition to accruing sick leave and vacation leave. So when employers heard, you mean I got to pay them for Friday and they're not working and I'm not bringing money in? How is this going to work? Well, certain countries had piloted that. And I guess in 2019, Iceland had approved a 4-day work week. And we got some data from that. And even though I guess this was started even before the Biden administration, but during the Biden administration, many Americans were like, well, I want to do that too. So what did they find out? So apparently this was an ongoing experiment that said begun back in 2015. It initially involved, according to Daily Galaxy, 2,500 workers. The trial was designed to reduce work hours from the standard 40-hour work week to 35 or 36 hours. Without reducing their pay. The idea of a shortened work week had been debated for years, so Iceland decided to try it on a nationwide scale. And the experiment was pretty comprehensive. They looked at public services, they looked at preschool educators, healthcare workers, office staff, the city council, and Iceland's capital. And workers were not simply expected to condense their hours and work extra hard. It was just don't work on those hours that you're getting paid to not work. So Iceland wanted to improve workplace efficiency by removing unnecessary meetings, streamlining administrative processes, and optimizing task prioritization. They said this approach focused on improving the quality of work rather than simply reducing the quantity of hours worked. As a result, they said the productivity of workers either remained stable or even improved in many cases. So according to the study conducted by UK think tank Autonomy and Iceland's Association for Sustainable Democracy, ALDA, employees reported significant improvements in job satisfaction, mental health, work-life balance, and had less stress and burnout. The public reaction to the trials was positive, and both employees and employers appeared to like it, according to the study. By 2021, 86% of Iceland's workforce had either transitioned to shorter hours or gained the right to do so through new labor agreements, many of which negotiated by labor unions. So according to the study, Iceland's unemployment rate remained low at 3.4%, their GDP growth 5%, and they said that the success lied in the workers' motivation, focus, and that they weren't overburdened by excessive hours. Now, I'm mixed on this because where I see, I'll go into a restaurant, I'll go into a company, I'll go into a medical facility, and where's the staff? There's not enough staff. And so I don't know if a concept like this can work. If you don't necessarily have to have boots on the ground or somebody greeting clients. I mean, if you have a situation where you need people there, like for example, I see a lot of teachers through telemedicine, and when I'll ask during the school year, do you need a note off work? They say, oh, I can't take off. Oh, there is no way. They don't have any subs. So I'm like, how are these other countries or these other industries saying that they want to shorten work weeks and let people stay home and get paid when most of the people I talk to say there's no staff? We don't have enough staff. And so I'm kind of mixed on that. In the medical field, I don't see how this could work unless you are overflowing with nurses and staff. But even when I was in training, where's the nurse? Where's the nurse? God, we needed nurses. And thank God, these nurses are the backbone of our healthcare system, but there was never enough. I need a nurse. Part of the reason why my education was so good is because I did most of the nursing. When there wasn't a nurse and something had to get done, I did it. And so, trying to make this a thing and make this go viral, where an employer has to pay you for 5 days and you get to work less. And now, mind you, in Iceland, they cut, the hours by 4, maybe 8. People are already saying, look, if we have off Friday, then Thursday should be a half day. And now Thursday is our Friday. I really worry about, the how much gets done and how you staff. Now, one issue, though, that I do like is, are we wasting a lot of time at work? So I remember seeing people goof around at the water cooler in the lounge, and I go, oh, is there a birthday? Because people would be gathering in the lounge in the middle of the day, not for lunch. And they're like, no, we got a meeting at 3. And it's 2:45. And they're in the lounge talking, which means they're already saying, well, because we got this meeting, I'm not going to get started on any new task. So if you do minimize a lot of the meetings and the BS, that could allow there to be more regular work done. 1-877-DOC-LA.
Cuando vas a la venta de verano de JCPenney y usas el cupón de 25% extra, no solo encontrarás un vestido vibrante y fresco para el verano con 25% extra, encontrarás los zapatos, el bolso y toda la onda con 25% de descuento extra. La prueba está en el recibo. Sí, es JCPenney. Cupón válido del 27 al 29 de junio en selección de estilos. Aplican algunas exclusiones. Detalles en la tienda o jcp.com.
This is an urgent announcement for anyone that's $10,000 or more in debt. Before you make another minimum payment, you need to know there are special programs that can completely free you of your debt. Total Financial Freedom can help you become debt-free in months instead of years. Resolve your credit card debt, signature loans, department store cards, internet loans, and timeshares. Call Total Financial Freedom now at 800-878-6020 for a free consultation. For 16 years, Total Financial Freedom has helped thousands get out of debt. You can feel confident when calling because Total Financial Freedom is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau. Battling for years and years stuck in the endless cycle of minimum payments could take decades. You have the right to get your debt resolved and substantially reduce your monthly payments. Call Total Financial Freedom now at 800-878-6020. That's 800-878-6020. 800-878-6020.
Hi guys, Dr. Daliah here. Addictions can sneak up on us and come in many forms, whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, video games, porn, or something less obvious such as food, internet, or shopping. Addiction can seem innocent at first and then evolve into an insurmountable evil. In our book, Addiction Basics, Caitlin Kalikas and I dive into the common addictions and provide tips for identifying and preventing these before they sneak in and take over our lives. Addiction Basics can be found on Amazon or my website, drdaliah.com. Check it out.
Let's face it, guys, we're living in times where the truth is becoming more suppressed and censorship is increasing at an alarming rate, especially on social media platforms. It's Clyde, and I want to tell you about a safe and secure digital playground we put together just for you. It's Aftermath.media. You get access to thousands of Ground Zero archives and podcasts, along with our private social media groups with your basic membership starting at only $7 a month. Each subscription includes tech support, access to the RSS feeds, along with our own chat room and Telegram channel. In addition, the premium membership includes research study groups, webinars, a document and movie library, a live video stream of Ground Zero, a monthly Zoom chat with me, and other bonus content. Be sure to check out our yearly specials as well. Sign up today while you're thinking about it. Sign up at Aftermath.media. Again, that's Aftermath.media.
Hey, I'm Dr. Z, and I'm a neurosurgeon. So that means long hours, early rounds, late nights, and everything in between. And through it all, I wear figs. Because they're built for what I do. Through the chaos, through the hours, and through whatever the day throws at me, they do their job so I can do mine. They're comfortable when it counts, and functional when I need them the most. So where do you wear your figs? On shift, on call, on the couch in the break room, listening to this podcast? Wherever it is, they fit right in. And now listeners of this podcast can get 15% off their first order. Just head to wearfigs.com and use code FIGSRX at checkout. That's wearfigs.com, code FIGSRX.
All right. We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Doc-Dolly, 1-877-DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer. And big thanks to you all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Daliah, Facebook, The Dr. Daliah Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So some of you might have seen a headline and was a little confused. Obamacare apparently was looked at by the Supreme Court. And a provision of Obamacare had been upheld as constitutional. Now, why is Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, being looked at by the Supreme Court? Well, the case apparently looked at how a committee members are appointed. The U.S. Preventative Services Task Force came to question. It's a panel of 16 volunteer health experts who determine with evidence-based preventative health services, they determine which evidence-based preventative health services like mammogram screening, thyroid screening, bone density screening should be covered by private insurance companies or not. Now, the U.S. Preventative Services Task Force wasn't necessarily supposed to be for Obamacare, but Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, utilized that as a guide or a barometer for what insurance companies should cover, which then, again, adds a political component to it. So many people look at the USPSTF guidelines as, well, wait a second, they aren't recommending screening for prostate cancer in everybody. They're saying, well, if you're over 55, it should be a personal decision between you and the doctor. Don't screen past 70 or 75 in certain things. No mammograms past a certain age. No colonoscopies past a certain age. And so many people kind of look at these as go, well, wait a second. If the USPSTF thinks a certain age is not worth screening, then we can't get screened. Insurance won't cover it. And it's been, it concerns a lot of people. However, the USPSTF is supposed to be just a guide. It's gotten more powerful. People use their recommendations to, as I said, make or break what you get paid, what's going to get covered. But it's really just supposed to be a guide because, if you have a family history of colon cancer, if, I had said for years, if you were Black or African American, don't be waiting until you're 50 to get screened. And thank God the USPSTF finally changed their guidelines to allow screening earlier. But, people, who may be of a certain race or demographic or genetics may be at risk for higher aggressive, earlier cancer. And so if these guides are one size fits all, and America is not all the same race demographic, there's got to be some wiggle room. But insurance companies, because of the Affordable Care Act, need to know what to pay and what not to pay. So the art of the Affordable Care Act allowed the art of, okay, wait a second. So if I have to cover pre-existing conditions and I have to cover essential health benefits, if the age is not what's recommended by the USPSTF, then we're free. So let's now cut out that piece of cake and let's look at the rest of the cake and see where we could save. And it's gotten ridiculous. I mean, I had patients on Medicare who needed pre-op chest x-rays that weren't getting the chest x-ray covered. So they would come back saying, I'm not getting the chest x-ray. And I'm like, but your surgeon wants it. Your surgeon needs clearance. No, the surgeon wants you to do a chest x-ray. Tell him you can't do it because the insurance won't pay for it and just clear me anyway. I go, I can't. The anesthesiologist wants the chest x-ray. So we have Medicare patients for years coming out of pocket to pay for something that really should have been covered. But because it was loosey-goosey with the Affordable Care Act, insurance found ways to not pay. It was ridiculous. And we kept seeing this. So what the Supreme Court had to decide on is the case members, how I guess the panel is chosen. I guess the case, according to, was called Kennedy versus Braidwood Management. It affirms that final decisions from the United States Preventative Services Task Force will come by secretaries, meaning RFK Jr. has the power to look at what the USPSTF says and make a decision. And they say this makes it harder for Congress to isolate expert decisions from political review. So the stakes in appointing political heads like the secretary are very, very high. So I guess the court affirms the constitutionality of having a task force, but it also held that members can be removed and can be at will of the health secretary. And the health secretary can review and decline what the USPSTF suggests, which does make sense. You know, the task force is volunteers looking at data, making suggestions. And so people had looked at, Kennedy fired a bunch of members, or all of them, of a vaccine advisory panel. He had the ability to. He could. Apparently, there's been a lot of disagreement on looking at thimerosal. I think people should look at thimerosal. And if there are any studies suggesting that could be risky, then take it out of vaccines. But, it's not like as big a decision, as we saw with the LGBTQ and the federal court injunctions and things like that. But it doesn't necessarily, say, oh, the Affordable Care Act is constitutional. I don't think we're going to see the ACA reversed anytime soon. It was designed and interwoven and like a cancer invading so much of our healthcare system that to repeal it and replace it could be, sadly, cutting the red wire of a bomb. And so the ACA has left us with a lot of a mess. With the exception of the pre-existing conditions and covering physicals, there's it's ruined many patients' relationships with doctors. They don't have their doctor anymore. Most doctors quit. Doctors can't have their own office. They weren't necessarily paid because of the high deductibles. So most doctors are now employees. And so it basically allowed there to be corporate medicine. And it took our tax dollars and started to pad the pockets of insurance companies. And so we're paying more for insurance. We're paying more for our deductibles, and we're getting less. But I do have an issue with this one size fits all. And, in some cases, the USPSTF, the task force does say, look, talk to your doctor. There should be wiggle room. But insurance companies under the ACA don't care about the wiggle room. If it's not in writing or law, they won't cover it. And a lot of people are worried about what gets recommended and what doesn't get recommended. The big thing people are concerned is ageism. And are older people going to be left out in the cold? You know, we have many individuals living well into their 90s. What if they do want a colonoscopy? So what you do have options. Unfortunately, it's not an easy option. Many of these options are you pay for it. And as I've said before, don't let an insurance company or a political party or a bill such as the ACA decide if you live or die. If you are concerned that you have cancer or you want screening, you get it done. Look at what happened with Biden. Biden, who's 80 years old, has now aggressive prostate cancer when just months ago everybody said he could live long enough to run for office and more. Why wasn't the prostate cancer found sooner? He's got grandchildren and great-grandchildren he wants to be with. So, you know, the idea of, well, if you're over 70 or if you're over 75, it's not worth it. For some, no. Maybe they, you know, want to live the rest of their life without medical conditions and just let nature take its course. But for others, they should be able to have that ability. And here's my thing. We worked all throughout our younger years so that Medicare covers us. And Medicare is the one that ends up not paying. You see, that's my problem with this. You know, if they're cutting you off at age 70 or 75, you've been putting money into Medicare so that you can get medical care when you're older. And now we're starting to see many more limitations on what gets covered when you're older. Not cool. Why isn't dental covered under Medicare? Why aren't hearing aids paid for? I don't get that. You worked. You put money into the system. And you seem to get the least out of everybody. 1-877 Doc Daliah.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems and their solutions. For example,
diesel fuel cetane levels.
in many states, the cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts. Due to a cleaner burn, there are less hydrocarbons and particulate matter in your exhaust. This reduces the blockage of your diesel particulate filter. Using Diesel Extreme generates 83% less DPF regenerations. The 6-in-1 Diesel Extreme formula also includes the most concentrated detergent on the market, lubricity enhancer, water demulsifier, rust and corrosion inhibitors, and a fuel stabilizer.
Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
All right. We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Daliah, 1-877 DOCDALI. So one thing that I find fascinating that I want to talk about, which does kind of have a psychological connection, is there are movies that bombed at the box office or critics slammed. Yet we watch them later and go, I love that movie. I like that movie a lot. And I find it fascinating that something that might have maybe had to compete with another movie, you know, I think The Big Lebowski was on at the same time as Titanic. So, of course, it didn't do well at the box office because Titanic was in the theaters. But The Big Lebowski, I love The Big Lebowski. Every time that's on, that's a classic. And so what might not be your time now could be your time or could become very successful in the future. Just like what might be successful now might not work in the future. So I'm looking at some of these lists of movies that tanked or were slammed by critics at the box office, but actually are now, pretty big hits. Let me see. One is, I think, very interesting. They say The Wizard of Oz had a week premiere. This was back in 1939. It premiered. It generated $3 million, which wasn't a lot. It was deemed a failure by MGM. The Wizard of Oz, which is now one of the biggest classics. Another movie was The Shawshank Redemption. Shawshank Redemption was, I think, a fantastic movie. But apparently it didn't get a lot of attention because Pulp Fiction and Forrest Gump were released that same year. So if you're comparing, it's interesting with dating, I noticed that. I didn't do a lot of wingman type of thing with girls because I'm like, if I'm standing next to her, I'm not going to look good. But if I get his attention without the other distractions of 8, 9s, and 10s, maybe a 3 or 4 might have a chance. I'm not saying the Shawshank Redemption is a 3 or 4, but it's amazing how positioning is so important, whether it's movies, whether it's dating, whether it's you're getting a job done, so you're not necessarily overshadowed. Starship Troopers. Starship Troopers came out in 1997. I don't think I saw it in the movie theater, but I'll watch reruns. I like Starship Troopers. It's a good movie. I don't know how well it did. I think the movie got beat up by critics. They said it was too gory. They didn't like the plot, but I liked the movie. I think that movie was good. Newsies. I remember Disney came out with the movie Newsies, and it wasn't much of a hit, but I watched it and I was like, this is a damn good movie. It just sometimes things just don't get a chance. I was the other day, the reason why I was looking into this is the other day Tommy Boy was on. Now, I never saw Tommy Boy. Well, I don't think I did. Tommy Boy had Chris Farley and David Spade. This movie was done a couple years before Chris Farley actually died of an overdose. May he rest in peace. And it was a movie that starred Chris Farley and David Spade. It wasn't that good a movie, and some of the antics weren't funny, but I liked the movie. I'll watch it again. But again, that movie didn't do well. I mean, it might have done better than some at the box office, but it wasn't the biggest hit. When Hocus Pocus came out, I don't remember that being a big movie. It had Bette Midler and Sarah Jessica Parker and Najimy from Sister Act. And I remember that was like, okay. Now, Hocus Pocus you see every Halloween, which is why some of these movies that have to do with holidays, like Christmas movies, it could become a Christmas classic when, like Christmas Vacation did not do as well as the previous vacations. But now it's a classic because we don't have a lot of Christmas movies from the past. I think It's a Wonderful Life had not done that well. Hold on a second. I want to look up that one too. There was a very old classic that did not do well in the theaters. Let me find that. I apologize because this is something that I want to say something on. Fight Club apparently critics did not like Fight Club. I've learned to not even pay attention to Fight Club. Christmas Story. I never saw the Christmas Story. Christmas Story came out in the 80s. I didn't see it. I knew that movie was around, but I mean, there were other movies in the 80s that were bigger. I don't know, E.T., whatever. And apparently Christmas Story now is one of the biggest, most iconic Christmas stories. It's a Wonderful Life. They say It's a Wonderful Life did very poorly in 1946 at the box office. But once it was picked up by TV networks in 1974, when the film's copyright expired, it got huge. And now It's a Wonderful Life is one of the biggest movies for Christmas. So what's the point that I want to make? Well, one, I think critics suck. I think just because a critic doesn't like something, like Ted, I love Ted 1 and Ted 2. Those movies are fantastic. I'm sure the critics didn't like it. I thought they were funny as heck. I love the Ted movies, the Back to the Future movies, all of them. I love the Back to the Future, the Die Hard movies. I don't care. Die Hard 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, nothing's like Die Hard 1. Die Hard 1 is one of my favorite movies and Christmas movies. Sorry, guys. Christmas. But it's, critics, who cares what the critics say? Number two is, just because something might not work or have the most ideal situation doesn't mean it doesn't have a second chance. How many of us, have remarried or have found relationships that might not have worked in high school, but worked later? So very interesting. I met my husband in college, and he was not dateable at the time because, he was, sowing his oats, and he was always hanging out with sorority girls and all that. And I was like, okay, well, I let him do his thing. I'm looking for more commitment, whatever. We didn't even think about dating, but it wasn't until years later when, we were both in, chiropractic school and medical school, where we were like, okay, wait a second, this could work. And if I would have blown him off based on his, early college days, I would have never had the man of my dreams or my husband. And so, I think in life, we think you have that one chance, you miss that train, it's done. And it's not the case. And I think we've learned time and time again, whether it's Hollywood, whether it's relationships, whether it's jobs, whether it's careers, that you actually can jump on a different train and get to a destination and still be successful. And in fact, even more successful. Trump always brings up how it was probably good he lost the last election because now he gets to be the president for the 250th birthday of America next year. He gets to be the president when the Olympics comes to America, which he says he helped get, and the World Cup, etc., to come to America. And he said in a roundabout way, in Judaism, we call that beshert, like meant to be. But in a roundabout way, he's happy he's president now because he was worried if he was president last term, then he wouldn't get to, be there for all this cool stuff. And so it's interesting how things seem to kind of work themselves out. So for those of you going, well, I missed my chance back then, or this didn't happen, or this didn't happen. Okay, you want to learn from mistakes, but what if it's not a mistake? What if there needed to be time in between? If I would have married my husband freshman year high school, we would have probably been divorced. But because we met when we were ready, when it worked. So I don't want to get too philosophical, but and I know we're at the end of the segment, but look at what happened in your past. Look at what you want, and you could always still get what you want. 1-877 Doc Daliah, don't go away.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new, lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99799 and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99799. Again, FREE to 99799.
Hi guys, Dr. Daliah here. Addictions can sneak up on us and come in many forms, whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, video games, porn, or something less obvious such as food, internet, or shopping. Addiction can seem innocent at first and then evolve into an insurmountable evil. In our book, Addiction Basics, Caitlin Kalikas and I dive into the common addictions and provide tips for identifying and preventing these before they sneak in and take over our lives. Addiction Basics can be found on Amazon or my website, drdaliah.com. Check it out. All right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. 1-877-DOC-DALI. Well, among many of the the groundbreaking SCOTUS cases and rulings, which I think was, kind of the right way for the rulings to go, was the child porn or porn access and minors. The Supreme Court upheld a Texas law that required age verification for pornographic websites. Why this came to the Supreme Court? Why wasn't this considered a no-duh? Obviously, porn sites need to age verify because critics said it affected one's First Amendment rights. The adult entertainment industry challenged the Texas law, said it violated the Constitution because they said it restricted the ability of adults to access protected online speech. Now, the court was divided on this. How could you be divided on age requirements for porn? But it was conservative versus liberal. Justice Clarence Thomas wrote the opinion for the 6-3 court, divided again with the 3 liberal justices dissenting, saying that the statute advances the state's important interest in shielding children from sexually explicit content. And it is appropriately tailored because it permits users to verify their ages through the established methods of providing government-issued identification and sharing transactional data. Texas law requires any website that publishes a substantial amount of content that is harmful to minors to verify the age of users. Why would anybody be in disagreement with that? Well, the challenger said that the law forces adults to identify themselves, such as providing an ID before accessing the porn, which they say violates access to free speech online because it would, quote, chill adults' access to that content. Now, multiple other states require users to show proof. You can't walk into a strip club without proof. I don't understand how, again, this wasn't unanimous. This just makes no sense. And so the idea of, people shouldn't feel like they have to show their ID and then they lose their privacy. You don't have privacy already. If you're accessing porn, there's an IP address. You have digital footprints, whether it's your phone, your computer, and if you're using a friend's computer, there's CCTV, there's satellite imagery. I mean, you're on camera somehow. Not to mention, many people's computers are already, understanding who the user is. The concept that I just don't understand why there's so much push to have kids have access to sexually graphic material. And you would think the Democrats were going to be more in protection of the kids. Yeah, I tell you why. All right. Yeah, I'm a little confused because you would think the Democrats would be, more on board with this, let alone even more of a sort of trailblazer, because years ago, you would marry earlier. If you were sexually mature at 13, 14, the Bible said be fruitful and multiply. Procreational sex was encouraged. Getting married early, starting your families. And so, the Democrats have been a lot more supportive of, well, you don't necessarily have to marry. You don't necessarily have to have procreational sex. It could be more recreational. We don't have to, we could buck some of those other traditions. So they were, less about religion. Yet, if they're less about religion and encouraging the early marriage and hooking up and, starting families, you would think they would also then be less promotional of sexual content. And, the idea of, well, it invades your privacy. If you have to put in your ID, you have to show ID to get into any bar, to get an apartment, to go on a plane, to go on if there has to be age verification of something that, is not appropriate for kids, you have to show age verification for movie sites. You used to have to do that for rated R movies. You couldn't go into a rated R movie without you having an adult. Now, I don't know if the movie theaters still do that, but I remember, if I wanted to see a rated R movie, having to show ID or have a grown up or an older sibling take me. That wasn't violation of free speech. And so I guess what people are worried about is if the average user does not want their family knowing that they uploaded their ID, that somebody could have access to their ID, then maybe look at porn in a different way. I mean, how did people used to look at porn? They would buy a magazine or they would rent, the Playboy channel or whatever was on TV. But now people want to use digital, have that ease of having it in the palms of their hands, on their phone or in their computer. Well, there is going to be a digital cost. There is going to be an identity issue. We have to protect our kids. If you have a choice, you don't have to upload your ID. You could go and get porn another way. You could rent a video. If you go to a hotel and you pay for a movie, that's under your name and that hotel has your ID. Why isn't that considered anti-freedom of speech? So, I'm just confused. And as I said earlier, I am just confused that liberal justices would have an issue with this. There shouldn't be liberal justices or conservative justices. This should have been unanimous. Kids should not be accessing sexual explicit content. And this is more than R-rated. This is X-rated. There has to be some protections. There have to be protections on social media. There have to be protections on the sites. There are, if you're going to operate a strip club, if you're going to operate a bar, if you are going to operate a marijuana dispensary, you have to verify age. And the same goes with something digital, if you have a digital store or not. If somebody wants to buy medications or a medical supply company, they have to show their DEA, their medical license, ID. All of a sudden, it's like with voter ID. No, that's violation of someone's rights if they have to show ID to vote. I don't get that. You have to show ID for everything else. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens. Now that the Supreme Court has, blocked the ability of federal judges to decide national policy and block a president or commander in chief because they don't like something he does. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. But the Supreme Court will always, drop their biggest cases right before they go on break, kind of like, throwing the grenade and then leaving. So we'll see what happens next week. 1-877 Doc Daliah. Dr. Daliah here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Lisa Wolf here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you. And be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.